Good afternoon, everyone. It's afternoon where I am. I hope that wherever you are staying safe and staying well. We've got a lot to cover today in a very short time, so I'm going to go ahead and get started with a little bit of background information. First of all, I'm David Barton. I'm a managing director with UHY Consulting in the technology risk and compliance area. The service offerings that we focus on are on the slide there. I won't take the time to read all that. I'm assisted today by my partner, Norman Comstock. Norman is out of our Houston office. And today we are going to be talking about a lot of new risks as a result of the COVID-19 virus. FAQs, our session will be between 20 and 30 minutes. The last one ran a little long. Participation certificates will be emailed to you if you'd like. Whether or not you get CPE depends on the state requirements and the particular requirements for your certification that you need in terms of continuing education. Digital copy of the slides will be sent later today, and we have a survey that will follow the session, so we would really appreciate your feedback. And there's also a chance for you to take advantage of a special offer that UHY is making. So your input is encouraged. Although you are muted, we will be answering questions and comments throughout the presentation. There's a control panel, and on the side there is an icon to raise your hand that will be answered by Norman. He can man that and can instant message back and forth with you. There's also a question. You can type a question in the box, and Norman again is going to be keeping up with any questions that come through, and he will interrupt me as I'm going, so that if you get your question in timely, I should be able to address it while I'm covering the particular topic. Okay, so with that, let's go ahead and get started. Oh, I'm sorry, one more brief note. We also are having some additional webinars coming up that UHY Consulting is offering. A week from today, we're going to be talking about how to engage and manage virtual teams, which is a little bit different challenge than what I'm talking about today. Also, we're going to talk about the game changer, inoculating your remote worker and practice network distancing as opposed to social distancing. Then Thursday the 9th, we'll be talking about flattening the curve and the effects on the U.S. economy. We have a guest speaker, I believe, for that one, who has spoken at many of our events, and he is very, very good. All right, I think we're done with the logistical stuff now, so we can go on right into the presentation. So first off, I want to talk about the current environment that we're in right now. Obviously, the world is changing rapidly as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. We suddenly have the largest remote workforce in history. We've never had this many people working remotely for businesses doing all sorts of things. So it's a brand new game, and with a brand new game comes a lot of brand new challenges, and that's what we're here to talk about. Businesses and governments are closing offices that are normally full of people and working. So everybody is working from home. Many suddenly remote workers have never worked from home before. So again, you've got confusion and angst on top of all of the other issues that are coming out on almost a daily basis. Anxiety is high, and there is a sense of urgency across the board for most everyone. So given all that, no big challenge, right? No, it's a huge challenge. So with all of that and all of the cyber issues that we already had been facing, knowing what's going on right now, what could possibly go wrong from a cybersecurity standpoint? I can tell you a lot. A lot can go wrong, and a lot will go wrong. So let's talk about some of those risks and what maybe you can do about mitigating some of those. First off, a little bit of review. These statistics are from prior to the virus hitting. These are not updated. they're probably, the percentages are probably higher now. 92% of malware is delivered by email. 95% of attacks on business networks result from successful spear phishing or just normal phishing. 95%. So any business that's had any kind of a cyber issue, 95% of them started with a phishing email. 97% of people globally are unable to identify a sophisticated phishing email. 97%. That means only 3% of people globally are able to identify a sophisticated phishing email. That means we are all at risk. The average cost of a phishing attack to a mid-sized company, what would you think? Take a minute, put a number in your head. And I'm going to tell you the answer here in a second. Got a number? Okay. $1.6 million. And I think the graphic is appropriate. $1.6 million that's flushed down the toilet because of a phishing attack. Additional risks. Obviously, there's increased phishing attacks as a result of this virus. Why? The hackers and the phishers have figured out that any crisis can be used to improve their odds of phishing someone. This particular email purports to be from the CDC, Health Alert Network. And if you'll note down here, it talks about the fact that updated list of new cases around your city are available at this website. Well, guess what? If you were to click on that website, you wouldn't be taken to cdc.gov. You would be taken to a false website that's probably laden with malware that is going to be used by hackers to get inside your workstation, laptop, whatever, your device, and compromise the systems and data that are on there. Here's another example of a phishing attack. This one is mimicking a World Health Organization update. And if you look at this closely, I mean, it looks official. It's got the official logo and coronavirus updates. It looks like a news release or a press release. But if you start reading it, you can see some clues. And the first clue is actually what it's offering. Inside this ebook, My Health, which up here is the actual attachment. And if you look closely, you see it is a zip file. Zip files are notorious for being a conduit for malware, ransomware, all kinds of bad things. So if you were to open that zip file, there's no telling what might be behind it that you don't want on your computer or as part of your system. The other thing is when you read this email, the language is a little bit clunky. It's not exactly, I wouldn't say it was written by a professional writer whose primary language is English. And here's a great example of what I'm talking about. You are receiving this email because your life count as everyone's lives count. So you can tell that there's probably some language issues there, and it may not be someone from the United States that wrote this. Here's another example of a phishing email. This time it looks like it's coming from inside your organization. It's signed Regards Human Resources. And basically the hacker can insert the company name, right? So I'm gonna do it for UHY Consulting. Due to the coronavirus outbreak, UHY Consulting is actively taking safety precautions by instituting a communicable disease management policy. Policy is part of organizational preparedness. Please read it, et cetera, et cetera. So if you were to click on that link, what do you think the chances are that you're really going to end up on your organization's policy website and be reading a true policy document? So once again, any kind of a link and any kind of an email, you have to be very, very, very careful and say, is this legit? That should be the first question you ask. So also, in addition to just being links, you can also have the attachments we talked about, like the one from the World Health Organization, right? Well, it gets worse. The folks who are on the dark web are offering these services where you can actually buy a kit to do phishing yourself. So this is why it proliferates so rapidly. They're offering this as a kit for sale so that anybody can send a phishing email, and the payload preloader is masked as a map. And the map that they're putting out there is Coronavirus COVID-19 Global Cases by Johns Hopkins University. Here's the example of the actual map. And a lot of people have downloaded this map and are using it to update where the cases are across the globe. The thing is, it didn't come from Johns Hopkins in this particular case. It came from coronavirusmap.com, which is not a legitimate website. So this particular image can have whatever payload that the bad guys want to put in there based on this kit that's being offered online. Scary stuff. All right, so here's another example of bad guys taking advantage of a worldwide crisis. This particular app is offered for Android devices, and it's purporting to be a coronavirus tracker so that you can track real-time coronavirus outbreaks in your street, your city, your state. The only problem is when you download this app and then execute it for the first time, you don't get a coronavirus tracker. What you get is a ransomware attack. It locks your phone and threatens to erase all the content on your phone unless you pay them $100 in Bitcoin. So we're trying to use new ways of communicating. We're trying to adapt to this new work environment. Our cell phones are critical to being able to communicate. And these guys are out there wanting to extort people for $100 a pop to prevent you from using your cell phone, one of the most important devices that we have in this particular crisis situation. So all of that to say that your employees are already more susceptible to phishing because of the uncertainty, the frequent change, the new processes and protocols, etc. They're out there trying to work from home. They've never done it before. They've got all these new technology challenges, and it's just stressful. And whenever you have a stressful situation, you're more apt to make mistakes. You're more apt to click on things you shouldn't. So again, the threat is real and it is increasing all the time. All right, so additional risks. You're going to see remote support scams on the rise. We're all familiar with this remote support where somebody makes a request to get into your computer and make some changes on the fly. So we're going to have folks getting calls from unfamiliar support staff. Why is that? Well, businesses are struggling to keep up with all of this, and they may have contracted with outside agencies that nobody's worked with before within the company. And so it may very well be that you get a call from someone you don't know, and they may introduce themselves as, hey, we're with XYZ Consulting, and your company's hired us to make sure that you're safe. That's not really who they're from, right? So here's the scenario. I'm Jason from Remote Assistance. We need to install some additional security software since you're now working from home. Can I take control of your computer for a few minutes? A remote worker, for the first time, not used to this, all sorts of things are changing. Very likely will say, yes, by all means, I want to keep my system safe. But instead of keeping your system safe, this guy is a bad guy, and he installs a keylogger so he can come back and track every single keystroke that your employees make. That includes IDs and passwords, websites they visited, account numbers, you name it. Anything that gets entered on that keyboard gets logged, and the bad guys can go back and look through it. And we've seen many, many cases of this in the past couple of years from clients of ours and others that have been a victim of some type of cyber incident. Here's another example. All of a sudden, Sally is working from home. Sally doesn't have a corporate laptop because she's never had to work remotely before. She's worked at a desktop the whole time she's worked for the company. So she needs to use her MacBook, which is the only thing that she's got. So she sends a request and says, I need to use this to work from home. Corporate IT says no. Why? Corporate IT only knows how to support Windows devices. MacBook is not something that they're familiar with. So in this situation, what is Sally going to do? Sally has to get her work done. She's going to find a workaround. More than likely, that workaround is not going to be something that's best for the security of the organization. So Sally says, fine, I'll just use my Yahoo account for my work email. I'll just use my Google Drive to store all my documents and so on that I'm working with, and I'll worry about uploading it all later. Creates a bad situation, a very risky situation. On top of all this, we already had a shortage of IT resources. That's been ongoing for many years. There's not enough qualified people in the workforce. So what's happening now is they're going to be scrambling to deal with the demands of more remote workers. There's companies all over the country that are ramping up and trying to get laptops configured and loaded with the right software and distributed to the people that are now working remotely. On top of that, they're not going to be available to deal with support tickets for remote transition for individuals. So this is another challenge, another issue, and because of the uncertainty and because of the new processes and so on, people are more susceptible to being fooled by someone coming from outside trying to win their confidence. In addition to all that, we've got people working off of their home networks and their home Wi-Fi. And many of these people, again, are not technically savvy. So they may have everything from wide open networks, like what's on the page here, to networks that are not really secure. They've never changed the default password on their Wi-Fi router, things like that. Secondly, cable modems and routers that haven't been patched for years. So they've had Comcast for 10 years, let's say, and their original modem that the company gave them is still in place, but it's never been updated because their service provider doesn't do that automatically. They have to request it or allow it or whatever. So firmware completely out of date and may have lots of known vulnerabilities that can be exploited by outsiders. In addition to all that, we've got insecure Internet of Things devices. The Internet of Things is proliferating at a very rapid pace. So you've got smart baby monitors now that connect to the internet. So you can watch your child from another room while they're in the crib. You've got Ring doorbells so that you can watch your front door from anywhere you are. Well, it used to be because you were at work. Now maybe they need a Ring doorbell for the office so that somebody can monitor what's going on there. We also have smart TVs. We've got Google Home. We've got Alexa. All these devices are part of your home network. They have an IP address, and anything that has an IP address can be used by a hacker to penetrate your network. And all of these things have been used in one form or another to penetrate networks. Insecure home computers and laptops. I use the example of Sally with her MacBook at home. Guess what? Sally may not have done updates. Sally may not have had an adequate anti-malware program put on that machine. So you've got unpatched operating systems, unpatched applications that are still full of vulnerabilities. And we all know if you pay attention to the news, about once a week, Microsoft releases new patches to the Windows operating system and many of their applications. So this is another issue. How far behind is the computer, the operating system, the application that your remote workers are using in terms of patches? Secondly, you got malware-laden home computers. Who knows what type of malware lurks on a machine that's been used by the family, right? And how long has it been since it's really had a good cleaning? And I have lots of friends and family that have had this issue over the years, and a lot of them just let the thing go until it doesn't work anymore, and then they start over. Privacy and confidentiality issues. If your company deals with private health information or other personally identifiable information, and the policy at the office is anytime you've got paper or reports or whatever that need to be destroyed or maintain confidentiality, you shred it. Well, your remote workers may not have a shredder, so that's an issue. They also have the capability on their home computer, because none of the controls have been set in place. They can offload all that data to local storage, to a USB device, small USB drive. Lots of ways to work around that. They're going to use their Google Drive to share information. They may start using Box, which is not secure. It's not necessarily. It's not as secure as a business account with Box or Drop or whomever. And then last but not least, working from public locations using public Wi-Fi, which is risky to begin with, but especially now so. So if we just look at this picture, looks like a typical neighborhood coffee shop of some kind. You can't really tell, but it looks like this lady may be leaning over to look at this lady's screen. What is she going to find when she sees that? This lady, don't know who's behind her. Inherently, public Wi-Fi is risky if you're not using some additional control like virtual private network, VPN, which we'll talk about in a minute. So what can you do? Yes.
Quick question for you from the audience. Someone has asked about being able to use their phone hotspot and the security issues with it. Can you comment?
Sure thing. If you're in a public place and you're using your cell phone as a hotspot, or if you have one of the many cell phone type devices, a MiFi or something else, that is by nature encrypted to a certain level. It's still not as good as a VPN that's controlled by you or your company, but it is much better than just jumping on the public Wi-Fi at the local Starbucks or whatever. So that is better, but still not as good as what we're recommending for our clients and customers. Thanks for that question. All right, so we're in a crisis situation as a nation and as a world. And anytime you've got a crisis situation, communication is critical. If you notice, the president and members of Congress are speaking more frequently than ever. I think the president's been holding press conferences sometimes twice a day, just keeping people informed on what's going on, what's coming next, all that sort of thing. The communication needs to be open, it needs to be honest, and it needs to be frequent. So communication is one of the key things you can do to help keep morale up and keep things safe. If you don't have one, please quickly develop a communication plan. What specifically do you need to do? Make sure that all your associates have access to the home phone and the cell phone for all critical associates in the organization. So we don't normally have this as part of our regular communications for an organization, but these are different times. Provide guidelines and protocol for using the various communication channels. And the more communication channels you have, the better, but you also need to have some protocols. So for email, for instant messaging, for virtual meetings, Skype, GoToMeeting, Zoom, etc. Personal phone numbers of people that are on staff, SMS text messaging, and by all means, office phone forwarding. If all you have to get a hold of the vice president of IT is the office phone and he's not at the office, then how are you going to get in touch with them? Cell phones and the cell phones are important to have and to be able to use. So one thing about this communication plan, a lot of companies have them. They may be out of date. They may not incorporate some of the new challenges. This is one of the things that UHY can assist with in helping you get up to speed, helping you develop the plan, get it distributed, etc. Likewise, a remote worker policy with just policies and procedures and protocol for remote workers. Again, some companies already had this because they had a workforce that was at least partially remote, as was the case with UHY, but not primarily. And now we've got everybody being a remote worker. So again, if you need assistance with this, so our staff can assist with getting this drafted, getting it updated, helping you with distribution models, etc. Same thing with an incident response plan. This is like the biggest incident that we've ever faced as a nation and again, as a world. So updating your incident response plan as you learn things through going through this crisis, they need to be noted and updated in your response plan. Okay, so some policies to consider, either in the remote work policy or the incident response, wherever. First, all access to corporate data and systems must be via VPN, virtual private network. VPN sets up an encrypted communication channel, and all information going to and from the endpoints is encrypted. It's a great way to mitigate the risk of having data breached from your organization. So next, I wanted to point out, a lot of companies are struggling with the fact that the infrastructure they have for virtual private network is limited. So they've had to go through triage and say, okay, these are the people that can utilize VPN. What are we going to do about the rest of the people who don't have access? There's lots of publicly available VPN services. So if you can utilize one or more of these, you may want to come out as an organization and say, this is the recommended VPN solution we have. Here are some instructions on how to get it downloaded, installed, and configured. Secondly, all VPN access should require two-factor authentication. We all know what that's like. We do it all the time with our online banking, with orders for Amazon, for lots of different things, even access to our email or other accounts. You type in an ID and a password, and then it says, we're going to send you a text message. Please confirm and enter the number into this spot on the website. That's two-factor authentication. It's what you have, which is your cell phone, and what you know, which is your ID and password. And the third thing you know is the code that they send you via text message. Other policies to consider. This first one is one that I've already had to institute in my own household. With everybody being home, including the kids are bored. They're going to be watching a lot of television, and a lot of that's going to be streaming. They're going to be streaming movies. They're going to be streaming audio, music, etc. They're going to be on the PS4 playing online games. All of that takes an incredible amount of bandwidth. And there may not be enough bandwidth left for you and whoever else is working out of your house to do the meetings and the seminars and the conference calls and so on that you have on tap. Excuse me. Okay. Next, you may consider allowing your associates to expense their bandwidth upgrades that they need while they're working from home. So if all they need at home is 50 megabits per second, which is sort of low these days, now all of a sudden they're doing all this virtual stuff. They need to up the ante and get additional bandwidth. In some cases, that's going to be an easy fix, just contacting their local provider and having them turn up the dial. In some cases, it may involve an actual house visit to do something different. Pardon me. Also, you might want to consider temporarily utilizing a forced homepage, a landing page, so to speak, for your intranet, so that you can get news and updates on new processes, new tools, new protocols, etc., for all your remote workers. So the first thing they see when they log into the work environment would be an update, a news update. All right, what else can you do? This is probably the most important thing. that you can do. And that is train all your associates. And I'm not talking just IT or just executive management. I'm talking every single associate. Because again, a lot of these people have not worked remotely before, and they are relying on the infrastructure at your company to protect them against phishing. Now they're out there in the wild, wild west, okay? So I want to point out this recent study by Ponemon Institute found that phishing and cyber awareness training reduced click-throughs on phishing emails between 26% and 99%, with an average improvement of 64%. I'm going to say that again, an average improvement of 64%. Now, if you are sitting there and don't think that reducing the risk of phishing emails, which can lead to ransomware, which can lead to business email compromise, which can lead to keyloggers, all sorts of bad things. If you don't think it's worth a 64% reduction in risk, then all I can tell you is you are relying on hope. So with that, this is UHY Consulting's offering to you. Because of this crisis, we are going to offer training, human firewall training, for up to 50 of your employees for $1,000. First 50, okay? It's $1,000 for the first 50 people. It is a private webinar for you and your associates to learn a whole lot more about what's going on and how they can protect themselves. We've only scratched the surface in this brief webinar we're doing today. There's a ton more content that we're going to provide. We're going to talk to them about all those individual things I've mentioned in passing, like ransomware, business email compromise, and other things. So this is our offer to you. It's a 1-hour training webinar, and again, specific actions for you and your employees to deploy. So on a first come, first serve basis, and at the end, the survey that I mentioned that would be done is where you can sign up for that. So I really encourage you to take advantage of this. You know, the $1,000 is basically covering our costs for the technology, the infrastructure, and our time as professionals to put these on. So again, very valuable training for a very small investment. So in summary, what we've talked about today, we're in a time of rapid change. The cyber threat vector has increased exponentially. Your associates need communication and guidance, particularly guidance and training for action. You need to train them to be your human firewall. The technology firewalls, the devices, all of that is great, and they do a great job. But at the end of the day, phishing emails are going to come through. You know they do. You've seen them. And when they do, you have to be able to discern, just like we walked through the example from the World Health Organization. You know, what were the clues? Well, the language was a clue. The fact that it was a zip file attachment, the fact that it didn't really have the right kind of language in it, those sorts of things. Utilize available technology to stay in close contact. All your communication channels, okay? The home phone, the cell phone, text messaging, instant messaging, FaceTime, whatever it takes to make sure that your people stay in contact and don't begin to feel isolated. So with that, feel free to reach out to myself or to Norman. Our email addresses are there. This is our website for technology risk and compliance, and website for the crisis management services that we've spun up. And just want to thank everyone for attending this webinar. I hope that it was valuable for you and for your organization. And again, there's a ton more content that we can offer you in one of those private webinars that we're offering.
Hey, David, we have one question that's come in.
Okay.
The question is, what do you think about the security of remote workers using their own home computers to access their desktop computers by using LogMeIn that has had file transfer capabilities turned off?
Okay. Well, a couple of issues there. If their laptop is already infected with some type of malware and you're using that remote desktop feature, log me in to a remote desktop. If it's got file transfer, that's a good first step, but there's still a lot of bad things that can happen. It's better than not putting in some kind of a remote desktop solution, don't get me wrong, but it's a good start. I wouldn't say it's the end all be all of protection, but it is a good start. If anyone else has any questions, please pop them in there. Otherwise, I want to thank you again for attending, and please take the survey, and if you feel like it's worth your time, we would love to have additional feedback. So thank you and good afternoon.